Hi, this is Sable Schultz, she, her pronouns, manager of the transgender services at the Center on Colfax. And today we are here with Jax Meyer, she, them pronouns. Did I get that correct?
Yes.
And you are the writer of a Marine's Hart series. Can you tell us a little bit about that series?
Yeah. So the series was never planned as a series, so it's a little odd at times. In that the first book is actually when the character is older and not a Marine anymore. But I recommend reading it first because it's her recovering and healing from the grief of losing her partner 5 years before then. So then I wrote their prequel, where her and her first partner get together, which for me was a very healing process of going through what is it like serving during Don't Ask, Don't Tell, and how would people even make that work? And it was pretty highly idealized in that they were lucky and things worked out. And then my most recent book, which is the third book in the series, is a Marine Discovery. And in that book, it's not a traditional romance because they're together. They've been together for 5.5 years. And this is the time when Cam, the main character, is transitioning out of the military, but Sharon is staying in, which was always the plan. But now it's 2004 and it's post 9/11. Whereas when they went in, it was peacetime. It was 98. There weren't the same stakes. So during this short period of time, we have Cam and Sharon learning that deployment is coming, but Cam is still getting out. So Cam's going to go off to college. Her girlfriend is going to be overseas during Don't Ask, Don't Tell. So they have to be careful.
Goodness.
And not only that, for Cam, it's her unit. So it's her friends, her best friends. Everyone's going to be in danger. So in this book, the Cam is the main character. And so where I wanted to bring it around was in book 1, Cam is aware and pretty comfortable with the fact that she's autistic. For people less familiar with the community, she'd be considered Asperger's. And then in book 2, she has no clue. She's 20. She doesn't know crap and is just trying to figure out her life and figuring out why she's weird and doesn't get people. So book 3 brings this kind of all around. And so when she's in college, she goes to a talk and starts to realize that maybe these autistic qualities apply to her. So for her, while her girlfriend's deployed and there's all that stress, she's discovering this fundamental aspect of herself, which is huge. Also, while making new friends and just trying to navigate a new world. And then at the end of the book, Sharon comes home, and I will say it is not a PTSD story, but it is a reintegration story. And so it's because what we miss in romance and fiction a lot of times in general is when there are big changes within a relationship, how do you work those out? And how do you not let them break you? How do you not take things wrong and all of that? So for me, it was the experience of exploring not only that pivotal experience for various queer people hiding during Don't Ask, Don't Tell, but how do you show like someone's experience of discovering their autism and all of that kind of all at the same time. So for me, it's a two-parter because there's a lot of people, even if they didn't serve kind of in that time period, certainly now the young kids, they don't have the first clue what we went through.
Right.
And if they were straight, they don't know. A lot of them, it didn't apply to them. They didn't care. It just wasn't an issue. So it's this unique period of time that I personally experienced and that people just don't know much about.
Right.
So that's, and the other aspect of it for me is it pisses me off to no end, this trans ban BS. And for me, it's if I can get people to at least relate to what cisgender people dealt with through my characters, then maybe it won't be quite such a leap to understand why trans people are fighting to get, to be able to serve openly and in their correct gender. So I always have an ulterior motive in my stories because I want them to have an impact and a benefit in the world for other people and not just in understanding maybe a part of our history.
Right. I remember that period in the mid early 2000s, right, when we were having service members come out, right? Finally coming out, even in the face of "Don't Ask, Don't Tell," and the impact that that had on our readiness. I don't know. What did you witness that? How did you witness that on your end?
Well, I actually was discharged under Don't Ask, Don't Tell in 2000. So for me, what's the bigger kind of trippy aspect is seeing people just be able to be completely and utterly open, be able to get married. There's no restriction now, and it blows my mind constantly. But my best friend recently met someone who was one of those women that said, I'm not going to hide anymore, and I'm going to force you to either discharge me and damage our readiness, or you're going to have to figure out what you're going to do. And that is the ballsiest thing ever. Because I could say the day I walked into my commanding officer's office with a piece of paper saying that I'm a homosexual, I'm not admitting to any conduct, and you're praying they're not going to investigate because you don't want to take anyone else down with you. But I was in a situation where I knew they were gunning for me, and it was only a matter of time, and the only way I could save my honorable discharge would be to out myself.
Right.
So I would say even those early days, though, after Don't Ask, Don't Tell, it took a lot of courage to be able to be open. Because it's not like, oh, well, just because the rule is gone doesn't mean people aren't gunning for you. Homophobes are still around. They'll still find a way to screw you over. And so this whole process has been, it's definitely challenging for the people who served. And even if someone didn't get discharged, that still leaves a mark. I mean, I don't know anyone who served during that time that doesn't have a little bit of baggage still about it.
Right.
And the fear and all of that. But I will say writing these books helped me process a lot of it and heal a lot of it.
That's amazing. What are some takeaways? You were mentioning having sort of a goal in mind with these books. What are some of the takeaways that you're hoping that readers will take from these experiences, from these books?
From me, it's not just understanding that policies that sound okay on the surface are often still detrimental. It's also that what we expect out of people is rarely what's really happening inside. And so I wrote it from the perspective of only Cam because I needed people to be able to get into the experience of an autistic person, but also a masculine of center person. Most people who are not masculine of center write those people, whether they're butch or like stud or whatever term people prefer, they write them very two-dimensionally. And I noticed as I read books that my favorite portrayal of butch characters are written by butch writers or non-binary writers because they're allowed to be vulnerable and have emotions, and hell, they receive during sex. Like, that shouldn't be shocking in a book, but it often is. And it's because like being able to show this like nuance to what it means to be butch. Like, Cam gets scared all the damn time, like, because she's a human and she doesn't understand the world around her. And so some of the best emails I've received from readers relate to that aspect, either the autism aspect, which has been amazing. I've had multiple readers email me seriously about trying out men's underwear, which is hilarious and awesome and amazing. And I recently got an email from someone who lives in Africa, and she actually apologized because butches are associated with being very gay, right? I mean, you're like, you look super gay, and it's purely because of our gender presentation. that for her, because it was dangerous to be gay, she often stayed away from people who looked more masculine. And through reading the book, she realized that she had made a bunch of assumptions and she's going to try to do better. And I'm like, you know what? I've made the same assumptions. Even being me, I make the same assumptions. So we're all humans and we're all just trying to figure things out. So one of my goals really is just trying to break down some of the preconceptions that we have around different types of people, whether they're butch, whether they're Marines, whether they're teachers, I mean, whether they're asexuals, like breaking down the preconceptions and seeing where we actually can all relate to each other. And even better, hopefully it will help people in relationships with the other person that they don't necessarily understand. Maybe they are autistic, maybe they are asexual, maybe there are these things that if they can see one example of how one couple handles these differences, it will either give them new things to try or open up their mind to find new approaches that will make their relationship healthier. And if not, maybe they'll figure out that they really shouldn't be together and that's better for them in the end too. But basically, I just want to have a positive impact on people and their relationships. I mean, That's all it comes down to.
What sort of message or takeaway would you like maybe LGBTQ folks who have not served and who may be looking at this experience from that outside civilian perspective? What's something that you're hoping that they'll take away from your writings?
Don't assume that we're like everyone else. I am progressive as all get out. And yeah, it's weird being in a predominantly conservative group. Absolutely. But for me, it's all about the ideal. I joined for the ideal. And when the ideal works, it was absolutely phenomenal. And so my absolute most trustworthy, best people in the world are the Marines that I served with. Some of the worst people in the world are the Marines that I served with. You can't assume anything.
Right.
And basically, everyone has their own reasons for doing things. And I try to make it understandable. And in the end, like, we're all just trying to figure stuff out. You know, some people do it just because it's the only way they can find to get out.
Right.
It's their only opportunity. For some people, they truly believe that they are going to be able to do some good. And, you know, it's to do that, especially during Don't Ask, Don't Tell, like we literally sacrificed our ability to be open because we wanted to be part of that. And I could guarantee you it was never about any of the like dark side of it, you know, and sometimes if you're 18, 19, you don't even know the dark side of it.
Right.
So basically, if we can all just be a little more gentle with people about the decisions they made, you know, that everyone's just trying the best they can. But I will say, if you know nothing about the military, you're not going to be lost in these books. It's not heavy military. I mean, it's engrossed in the military, but it's not heavy on the terms. Terms are defined. It's still just people, kids, really. I mean, they're all like 19. I mean, especially in the early books, but there's a different maturity there. And so you see people wrestling with it, especially in book 3, wrestling with what does it mean to deal with, you have to go if you're ordered somewhere. And what happens when a person dies, but they were an absolutely crap human and like a homophobic racist? Well, what does that mean? There are things to wrestle with in all of this. And so there are in moral arguments and just all of this stuff that maybe the average person doesn't wrestle with because they don't have to. They have the luxury of not wrestling with it. But when you're there, like you have to constantly reconcile the ideal of the Marine Corps versus the, wow, they screwed up part of the Marine Corps and all the aspects in between. And because it's always going to be a little part of me, no matter how old I get. So it's definitely, I try to wrestle with some of these things without getting too heavy-handed, and there's still a lot of lightness, a lot of cuteness. There's a lot of heat in those books, the second 2 books. So it's still fun, but I try to make sure that there's some substance and something interesting to learn along the way.
Sounds like a lot of fun. What advice would you give to other LGBTQ writers out there who are working on their own voices?
Write. Just keep writing. Don't worry about publishers. Honestly, in most cases, it is not worth it to work with a publisher. I'm independently published. I've been mentored by a bunch of other people who are independently published, so I had a ton of help. I'm open at any point. If anyone has questions, just toss me an email or whatever. But right, what we need more of is own voices. So especially if you are not the average cis white queer person, please write. We need your voices. Like, we cannot make a diverse LGBTQ literature section without more own voices. Because, look, I do my best. Sharon is a Latina woman, and I did my best to avoid stereotypes and all sorts of stuff. But still, I realized recently when I'm starting to write the second book from her perspective, just for fun. It'll be like a freebie. I was whitewashing stuff without realizing it, simply because I didn't have her experience being Latina in the military. So I know parts of it, but now I'm actually having conversations with other Latinas from that era to try to tell more of their experiences so that I'm not selling it short. But boy, is that stressful from my end, because I don't want to do it wrong. So please, and seriously, just because I say cis white, we need more of the that doesn't mean we don't need other cis white people, right? Like, just if you have a story to tell it. There are lots of resources and people that can help, including myself. I will connect you with as many resources as possible. But the more that people write, the more we have different stories. And you can't possibly tell the exact same story as anyone else unless you're purposely trying to. So write, find stories. I was 39, 40 when I first wrote my first story. I had no idea I could write. I've never considered myself a creative person. In many ways, I still don't. But I'm creative in my own way, and I've embraced it. And now I'm actually in a screenwriting program. I'm writing 2 movies over the next year. Like, you don't know what you're going to do until you start writing. And when I had a dream. I literally had a dream that turned into like a little bit of a thing, and it just kept growing, and all of a sudden it was a book. And then it was like, well, now I wonder what happened. And then it became another book. And now I have 4 books with a 5th one that I'm editing. And I mean, it just, you don't know, but don't let any of the preconceived ideas you have about how to write or anything like that get in your way. It will be beneficial to your personal growth at minimum, and you might just change other people's lives in the process of sharing stories. And that feels really dang good, and it makes it worthwhile. So I highly recommend it. Just write, see what happens. At the same time, I will caution, don't rely only on your experiences. Learn about other people, learn about problematic representation and good representation, because even being queer yourself, it's easy to fall into stereotypes or just kind of like, sometimes the obvious solution isn't the best solution. And so I would say, like, get connected in the community. Please don't just go writing butches that are all stoic and don't talk about their feelings and never get anywhere with them, right? Like, they're people, like, and that's for every character, right? Characters should be people with this whole 3-dimensional thing. So I would say, like, try to do a good job, but don't stress on it when you're first just starting to write. Just write.
Any thoughts or any words you would give to LGBT community members who are serving right now?
I would say, 1, know your history so you know why policies can be bad. And I mean, especially if you're cisgendered, understand why allies are so needed. Like, the queer service members at the time did not overturn this ban. It didn't overturn Don't Ask, Don't Tell. It took a lot of straight people helping us out too. And trans service members are not going to be able to do this alone. And until everyone is free to serve, there's always going to be oppression allowed. It's a dangerous situation, and it's dangerous for everyone serving at that point. And so basically, just because you have freedom, you're not off the hook, and it could very easily go the other way. Just look at what's happening in the government now. So I would say recognize your history, enjoy it. I mean, like, seriously enjoy your freedoms, because it is mind-blowing to those of us that didn't have them. And just keep trying to do your best and try to be a good influence on the people around you, but exercise self-care. It's really not much different than what we're dealing with right now with the Black Lives Matter movement, everything else. Like, we need to be good allies. We also need to be just good people in general and just do our best. And, you know, because we don't know what's going to be happening in the coming weeks or months, or everything's crazy. So, yeah. So basically just, you know, and if you run into some of us from that era and you don't understand why maybe we're a little quiet and don't want to talk about it that much, maybe read my book and understand it. Sometimes those memories are still too painful to talk about in general. So.
Right. Thank you so much, Jax. Links to your books will be down in the description, as well as links to our donation page. Remember to like and subscribe and hit the notification icon. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much, Sable. Right, bye.